Well, dang it. I'm taking a break at work, and the last thing I really want to do, but at the same time, something I feel compelled to do, is to talk about something that, is considered controversial in the modern day: immigration. So, right off the bat, if you have an issue with that, then, maybe just this isn't the video for you. But I'll tell you honestly, I've been wrestling with this lately quite a bit. There's topics I want to discuss, and generally I'm, believe it or not, extremely reserved in what I talk about. Even with thousands of videos, I don't generally want to talk about controversial topics because it's very hard for me to express myself. I don't blame other people, I blame myself. I hear some people who are so articulate and they're so able to speak their mind and how they feel. And I feel like the best videos I make on controversial topics are the ones that I do research on. So if I haven't done research on something, then I'm just going to shut up about it for the most part. And that doesn't mean that I won't chime in on my opinions on topics, but when it comes to immigration, I feel like if you bring that word up and you say ICE, right? Instantly people have a reaction one way or the other. Either they believe you have these, masked bandits going around kidnapping everyone and that it's horrible and totally unconstitutional. And then you have others who are saying, well, no, this is what we need to do because, immigration has flooded this country and is draining the coffers. And, when you have discussions with people about this and you really break it down, it usually comes down to money or crime. So looking statistically, you find that immigrants are less likely to commit crimes than citizens. But still, if you ask most Americans, well, should we deport illegal immigrants that commit crimes against Americans? Everyone I've talked to says yes. Every left and right wing person, it doesn't matter who you are, everybody agrees that a person should be deported if they are committing crimes in America and they're not legal. Now, if a person commits crimes in America and they are a legal resident, or rather, I should say, if they have a visa, let's say, that could be treated differently. I don't know. These things have to be worked out at the court level, and they have been for a long time, and it's a very complicated issue. But what we have right now is a huge amount of panic by the left about how many immigrants that they're taking in. And the reason why this is important is because from what I've seen, and look, this is why people don't talk about this shit anymore. They're afraid of talking about the data because the data might be skewed. Nobody knows what to believe. From what I have gathered from several sources, of all the people who have been rounded up and arrested by ICE since the Trump presidency started, 70% of them, 71% actually, have no criminal convictions. So I just want to make this clear. They may be here illegally, but according to the U.S. justice system, they have no criminal convictions. Now, people will argue, well, being here illegally is a crime. Well, it's actually a civil offense. But let's just set that all aside and say America wants to change the way we do things. It's not really a change because, to be clear, for those who think that, Donald Trump, deported so many, illegal immigrants in his first term, he only deported the same amount as, the same amount as Biden, I believe, 1.49 to 1.5 million. It was like the same amount. Whereas Obama had deported 2.9 million. He deported twice as many immigrants as as either of those presidents. So for all the hatred of Obama, I mean, it just seems like people don't really know where their values stand because they don't have the right information. And this is what gets it. I guess to make this very clear and simple, the fact that 2/3 of the people arrested don't have criminal convictions tells me there's something seriously wrong with the way we're doing things. And if we're not even improving, it's all the little helicopters falling out of the maple tree. It's a windy day today. I really hope this roof doesn't blow off because I just put it on there I hope I put enough screws in it. It's one of those corrugated roofs. But anyway, so let's keep this light. Let's just be straight up. These are human beings. I know people have an issue with those here illegally. I know that there is a huge push to claim that everybody is in the Tren de Aragua gang. But let's just say, what triggered me to make this finally was this: the other day, there was a raid on an apartment building in Chicago. And I know it's just a show of force. Trump wanted to show that he's a big boy and that, you know, he can send his guys in. But they literally came in with Black Hawk helicopters, okay? And rappelled down onto the top of this roof and through windows and had hundreds of agents and trucks swarm these buildings. Now, I wanted to, this point I have to make very clear, because this is the main argument that I'm making here. For those who are saying that it's going to save us money to deport these people because they're taking away from, you know, public services, or that they can get hospital help or healthcare when we can't. A lot of this shit's been blown out of proportion, but let's just say, for the sake of argument, I have this piece of paper in front of me that had my notes, and then I spilled some soda, so it's smeared. But the burden, there are, according to statistics, there are 3.7 million unlawful households in this country of illegals, right? 3.7 million. That's a lot, okay? Now, how much does that cost? Well, they're saying that within those households, including also those who don't live in households or live with groups or friends or, you know, on the go in their cars, whatever, there's apparently 14 million illegal immigrants in this country. Now, being here as an illegal means you're working here, most likely. Not guaranteed. Plenty of problems with gangs, with especially the way in California and elsewhere, these cartels move in, start growing weed, and these people need to be dealt with, and it should be dealt with, you know, prudent force and, you know, extreme defense of this country. That's the thing. You can both do that and also not raid Home Depot and arrest people who are going to work. There's a big difference between a Tren de Aragua, whatever the fuck they are, Aragua gang member who's here selling drugs, and somebody who is just trying to work a job to feed their family. But let's just get to the numbers. How much do they actually cost Americans? How much do they cost the taxpayer? All the illegals combined, with all the expenses they incur, including health care, you know, benefits, whatever it might be, just supervision, you know, it's about $54.5 billion a year. Now, that is a huge amount of money, okay? But let me just say, the Trump administration just approved a budget for ICE. This budget is larger than all the state and local police forces in the entire country combined, okay? More than we spend on all cops in the whole country. He just put into ICE $170 billion, okay, over 4 years. So you might do the math in your head and say, okay, well, that's still saving us $30 billion. Well, then you have to add in how much is paid into Social Security. Social Security, they pay in approximately $26.2 billion every year, illegal immigrants, that they will not get back, okay? This is money, $26.2 billion that is paid into the American system. Really, this should be going to Americans, but we're all going to be screwed on Social Security because it's been drained by those in power. But this leaves $28 billion. So in other words, in a 4-year period, it might cost $100 billion in, you know, having illegal immigrants here, compared to upwards of $200 billion that will be spent to try to get rid of them. Okay, this just doesn't make sense financially. So if you're a fiscally, minded person, and it's just about the money, and you believe that deporting immigrants right now is worth it because we're saving money, you're wrong, because the numbers don't add up. But let's just say it's not about that, because here's the thing: we're not adding into this. Every one of those 14 million immigrants, they have to buy gas to get to work. They have to buy food at the store. They have to go shopping, have vehicles. These things are also putting back into the American economy. Okay, so it's probably much less than 20 billion, and I'm going to guess it probably balances itself out pretty well. But putting a huge amount of money in as a show of force to send in helicopters to apartment buildings, this is just out of control lunacy. And I don't understand how anyone could justify this, but apparently they found one, or like I guess they said they claimed to have found 2 gang members in this apartment building that they thought was infiltrated by gang members. And apparently over the last several months of trying to get these Trinidad Aragua gang members, up to this point, until they got those other ones, they only got 1 female gang member out of all the people they've arrested. And I just want to say, fear is a very good motivator of getting people to support your actions. And if you are a person who just doesn't like Mexicans, doesn't like immigrants, I get that. I understand that. Just being honest with that really helps, because it's like, okay, that's a mindset that I understand. But for all the people who say, well, I'm not racist and I think immigration is good, it just has to be done right, I want to make this clear. We're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars spent on enforcement. Do you know how much was put into the immigration court system, including all of the different systems that they use for processing people and their asylum claims and everything else? It was $800 million. It was less than $1 billion. So it's 0.5% of what they're spending to try to combat immigration. They're spending 0.5% of that on processing people, and then we complain about how it takes so long and why the immigration process isn't working. This is lunacy. And it's to create an enemy out of thin air, so people have somebody to disagree with, to complain about. It's the same game that's been played against those in the Middle East, which growing up, to me, those in Iraq, they were never a threat to me. The people in the Middle East, Arabs, Muslims, they were never, it even came up when I was a kid. We'd hear about some terrorism somewhere. But until the U.S. stuck its nose in everything, it wasn't even a problem. We created a problem to perpetuate the machine and perpetuate the state of profits and the war machine. This is undeniable at this point, because here's the thing. They're not just rounding up people and deporting them. They're rounding them up and they're putting them in facilities that they've built. I haven't even included the price for these facilities and the cost to run them, or the fact that they have a place called Alligator Alcatraz, where the president and his Christine Noem, which is just a disgusting human being, has just been, basically said, haha, you try to run from here, you're going to get eaten by alligators. The mindset, I understand it's to enrage people. That's the thing, because I've seen this playbook. I've read so much about other cultures and history. I've realized over the years I'm very bad at articulating it when I'm talking to people, because discussions get heated. As soon as you get a little bit frustrated, you kind of lose what you're going to say. But let's just say I know the playbook for authoritarianism, and I can absolutely see what's unfolding in front of my eyes, but I'm not surprised. This goes back to what I said about Obama and Biden, because whenever I have a debate with somebody who's pro-Trump and everything he says, they're always like, but Biden did this, or Obama, and I'm like, yeah, you're right. Fuck that guy too. And honestly, you expect them to finally, maybe say, well, okay, you agree on something, but no, people shut down. The minute that they talk shit about a left-wing politician, and you agree with them on that too, I've found this happens online all the time when somebody leaves a comment expecting me to like defend Democrats. To make it very clear, I am not a Democrat. I do not believe in the two-party system. I'm Gen X. I'm not a fucking idiot. I grew up with the same system then as a kid, the two-party system. But we grew up in the truther generation. The difference between us and the younger guys is we had a chance to sort through the bullshit and stop dividing ourselves. That's why I stopped hating conservatives or assuming that Christians are conservatives or, these fundamentalists are the problem. No, they have different viewpoints. Do you think you're going to change their mind by just sitting there and like talking shit about them? All the left-wing pundits, they're so cringe. And then you find out that a lot of them are paid by, these organizations. But let's just say in the end, it all comes down to one country that seems to fund a lot of the division in the U.S. And I'm not even going to say the name because my channel this whole video will get pushed to the very back of the algorithm and nobody will see it if I talk about that one country that all of the Congress in my country answers to. That one country that we find out that all of my politicians in my country are total sycophants to this tyrannical place, which is right now, in the last year has bombed 7 different countries, has made deals and backed out of them, assassinated various leaders. It's insanity. But when you see that it's always been about money, then you can step back and say, maybe the Mexican down the street who's just trying to fucking feed his family is not my enemy. Maybe the guy next door who voted for Joe Biden isn't my enemy. And to all the people on the left, stop fucking hating all Trump supporters. I'm so sick of hearing people lump every Trump supporter in as like the same kind of person. You're all racists, you're all haters. It's bullshit. It's lunacy, and you guys are making all of us look bad who may be somewhere in the middle. In other words, the left has pushed so many people away because their version of extreme viewpoints is just as bad as the right, in my view. People will argue that there's more violence on the right. Honestly, I'm kind of past this. I don't give a fuck about the violence aspect. I care about how do we all get along and come together, because if we're just pointing the finger at each other every 4 years, nothing's ever going to fix in this country. But I have to leave on this note. The reason why I find this so fascinating is because I actually don't give a shit. I mean, I've said this to my friends, and they don't understand my viewpoint on this. I'm very collapse aware. I believed for the last, say, 20, 30 years, about 30 years, that in my lifetime, the West is going to completely dissolve and collapse under the weight of its own ignorance. Because of what I learned when I was younger, and it's only gotten worse. But I've had to play the game. When I was in my 20s, somebody's like, look, you just play along. You gotta get a job, you gotta do the thing and pay the bills and get a house. Like, you gotta get ahead somehow. You've got to at least be able to stay functioning within this system and make it work to your advantage, because even if it does collapse, you want to be prepared. So I've always been prepper minded, storing dried food, things that I might need for self-protection, for whatever it might be, the final kind of thing I needed. And the biggest aspect was having a property I can grow my own food on. I now have 3 fenced acres, a property with 3 fenced acres, 1 acre of field, 2 acres of forest with a house on it, and I am so stoked, so grateful. I want to start, my own food garden, forest, and whatnot. And the truth is, if there's it's a rural area, so it's going to be, honestly, I live in an area with the highest percentage of white Lutherans, like, in the country. You gotta see this, it looks really cool. All the little things falling on the roof. On a side note, don't ever use one of these plastic roofs from Home Depot. Don't buy these. These are from that country I was telling you about. The one that starts with an I and ends with an L. The one that, you know, Congress answers to. But as I was installing these, I realized they were made there, and I was like, it's the only item I've ever used in construction that was made there. But if I'd known that, I wouldn't have bought it, because I do believe in boycotting and divestment, and I do believe that the people have a voice. And I do believe your voice is important. No matter what side of the aisle you stand on, let me just put it this way. People talk about what side of the aisle you're on. I just envisioned this church in my mind. And here's the beauty. If you're on either side of the aisle in a church, guess what? When you leave the church, you leave together and you all meet in the middle, right? I mean, there's got to be a metaphor in there to use somehow. Yeah, both sides of the aisle come together because we all have to use the fucking aisle, okay? I didn't want to cuss. That's just another thing that pushes it down. The point is, I guess it doesn't matter. I don't really make these videos to be seen, but the discussions that I do have, I hope will reach people who have different viewpoints than I do, to realize that not everybody's fucked in the head. Not everybody is... I wanted to say not everybody on the left, but I'm not on the left. I left the left. I was never on the left. People just told me I was on the left. I've decided where I'm at, okay? And I'm polka dotted, okay? I'm not on the left or the right. I'm polka dotted. I'm fucking everywhere. I've got points I agree with over here and over here. I argue with my brother, who's a liberal, about traditional values and the value of conservatism in certain aspects. He totally disagrees. I argue with my other friend about the value of liberal views. He totally disagrees. We all have different viewpoints, and the most lonely viewpoint is your own. So that's why today's sponsor is Yo Mama. No, I haven't done sponsors. I don't plan to. Maybe one day. I'd love to pay the bills doing YouTube videos, but hey, the reality is I can talk about what I want. There's a lot of self-censorship going on right now out there. Some of the biggest YouTubers are afraid to say anything, and a lot of them are saying other things on purpose because they're being paid. In fact, right now, that other country I was talking about is paying $7,000 per post for that country propaganda. And it's nothing new. It's just blatant. I don't trust anybody anymore. I don't trust the influencers. I never have, but I don't trust when I say influencer, I mean like the podcasters, the ones who have a lot of viewers. They're all compromised. All of them. And guess what? So are we. We can only say certain things. We have limits, and free speech seems to be coming to a halt. And no, for anybody who thinks this just started, no, this has been ongoing. Remember, when Biden was president, it was the, quote, woke left that were the ones telling you what you could and couldn't say. If free speech has limits and you try to put it on other people, it's going to come back on you. So you start to ban everything as being racist or homophobic. You start forcing people to say certain things and telling them they have to use pronouns, whatever it might be. Whether you think it's right or wrong, what it does is it pushes people to the other extreme. That they're going to say, now, if you say this, you're this. And it's absurd, my friends. It'll pass. I still believe cooler heads will prevail in the long run, because we all still have to live here. So that is my rant for the day. It was a little more than immigration, but I'm going to get back to painting now, and I'll see you next time. Be well. Take care of each other. Don't be an asshole, right? It's pretty fucking simple. Just don't be a dick.